Hello and welcome to episode 1108 of The Sleeper and the Bust. It is Tuesday, October 25th. I'm your host, Paul Sporer, joined this morning by Justin Mason. Justin, good morning, sir.
Good morning. How you doing?
Doing pretty well. How about yourself?
I'm doing all right. I had a family of sick people, and so my 4-year-old has decided that this is the time that she wants to spend every night in our bed.
Let me catch the sickness too. Now we pass it around.
I'm pretty I got a pretty good immune system, so like everybody in the house gets sick, and I end up being fine most of the time,
Fighting it off left and right.
But like I don't care how big of a bed you have. We have a big bed because I'm a big guy, it doesn't matter. Like you put a 4-year-old in that bed, and she's kicking you in the back of the head all night long.
It's like Big Daddy.
Yeah,
remember that movie? Yeah, when he's like rolling around, taking up all the space. You'd think like putting a little dog in the bed wouldn't be a problem. Char's got some 4-year-old energy. She somehow takes up exponentially more space than she is. So I can semi-relate. I'm not saying dogs are kids. I know it's not a one-to-one, but I feel you on that. I treat them like that, but I don't want to disrespect parents out there. Anyway, we're talking starting pitchers today. We both have rankings established. You do not have yours out yet, right?
Mine will come out probably next week. I'm finishing up my super depressing series on how bad my season was, and that should finish up probably this week. And then next week I will drop ranks for every position. Next week I'll have them all loaded up so that way I don't have to worry about doing anything while we're in Arizona for the Fall League.
Love it. I am very excited for the Fall League. It's going to be an absolute blast. But yeah, we have lots to talk about here. So let's go ahead and get started with, we had a few names that I was like, these are the unranked. And then you're like, wait a minute, I forgot these, hang on. And so we don't have any notable unranked right now. We're going to get into a few different groupings. The first one I noticed is that we just kind of have a stark outlook on finesse lefties. There was a group of them that we wound up being quite different on. Martín Pérez, Cole Irvin, Jose Quintana, Tyler Anderson, and Jordan Montgomery. So let me break these up a little bit differently. Let's start with Pérez and Quintana. I kind of grouped them together because they were guys left for dead. Irvin was coming off the pretty good year. People in leagues of enough depth were interested in him because of Oakland. And then Tyler Anderson was with the Dodgers, so he also had some intrigue that was kind of rated above Pérez and Quintana and Irvin. And then Jordan Montgomery was just well regarded and pretty much a mixed league pick across the board. Maybe a kind of a waiver wire type guy in 10-teamers to start the year. But so we'll break it down like that. We'll go Pérez, Quintana, Irvin on his own, then Anderson and Montgomery. So Pérez and Quintana had brilliant years, and you kind of gave him a little hat tip on that, saying because of how good those years were, I felt like it was worth, I being you in this instance, having them at a ranking of a certain number. You got Pérez at 72 and Quintana at 86. I put him 136, 137. I was pretty harsh.
Disrespect.
But, I mean, I stand by it. I have some concerns about what they're going to actually be able to do next year. And I don't know that my fears can be fully assuaged with regard to these guys. I certainly don't see myself necessarily drafting them. I will say this. I don't believe that Quintana or Martín Pérez are going to be terribly pricey, but that alone will not generate interest for me personally. So let's talk about these two. Pérez, Quintana, you are a little bit more favorable on Pérez, although 72 to 86 ranking is not that much of a split. So I think you like them pretty similarly. So, but let's start with Pérez. What did you see this year? Because I was doubting him all year. Let me take my L first. Doubting him all year, saying the home run rate will go up. I don't think he can keep doing this. He did it. He did it all year. So credit to him. And there were factors that changed to make Martín Pérez better. But can those carry over next year? Namely, the sharp ground ball increase that helped him keep the ball in the yard at like a career best clip, 0.5 homer 9, with a 7% homer to fly ball rate, which was 10 points or 9 points lower than last year and well below his 12% career mark. So what did you see on Martín Pérez's, kind of breakout sort of year here? And what do you see for him next year?
I mean, I think this is very park influenced. And so I think with both of these guys, we have to talk about the fact that they're both free agents.
Yes.
Now, I think that Perez especially will end up back in Texas. I just think
I hope you're right.
The reason they didn't trade him at the deadline, even though they weren't competing, tells me that they consider him part of their future, and that at worst they're going to give him a qualifying offer. And if he gets a qualifying offer, he's got to take it. I mean, I don't know.
Yes.
I don't know how you leave. What is it, $18 million on the table or whatever?
Yeah.
So I would just be shocked if he was not back in Texas. Now, we saw this last year with Jon Gray, right? Like, but
it's the Rockies. Like, so they're morons, so keep that in mind too.
I mean, I don't want to give Texas too much credit though, like spending the money they did on two guys in Simeon and Seager. Like,
I didn't have any problems with that.
It seems so weird to spend that kind of money when you're seemingly that far away. Now I think they're definitely closer now.
I think we talk out of both sides of our mouth like that as a baseball community though. Why don't the poor teams why don't the low teams spend? And then they spend. What are you guys doing? Like, they can't win. I mean, these are two guys. In Seager, you got a guy that was well on the right side of 30. This was his age 28 year. And then Semien, a little bit older, but obviously had established himself as a really strong player. Got off to that bad start, but then played well. You got two really strong guys that ended up having good seasons. I mean, I think that's a start there. So I got to disagree with you on that one. I thought it was okay.
No, I mean, like, I was surprised. Let's just say that. But that being said, like, I think Perez, I mean, he made a conscious decision to allow more contact or take advantage of that park and let his defense pick him up behind him. And he's never going to be a stud. And I think often when people rank in this spot, they go, oh, I want a guy who can become, an SP 40. I don't want a guy who I think probably caps out in SP 60. But one of the things I noticed, and I kind of talked about this off air, just kind of briefly, is like one of my weaknesses, especially in like my draft and hold strategy in 2022, was not getting these kind of mid-rotation starting pitchers that could just be stalwarts, that could just get me innings. And Perez is that guy. Like, I think Perez, he's not gonna win me my league necessarily, but he's gonna keep me competitive while other guys hopefully win my league. So, I'm a little bit high on him, but
at what level? Let's clarify that a little bit, because we do play in deeper formats in general. The two of us, 15 team being your full focus last year and my primary focus. I think I'm going to look into shaving the 12 teamers out of there as well, just like you did this year. So, we're talking on a different level, because prior to this year, Martín Pérez could get you some innings, but were they innings you necessarily wanted? So I guess the question is, where does he regress to, right? 2.89 ERA, 126 whip this year in 196 innings. Put him back in Texas, where you think Perez is going to be. What does Martín Pérez do next year that has you drafting him as the 72nd pitcher?
I think he's like a 3.75 kind of ERA guy.
Okay, so you're giving some credence
with a lot of innings. Like, and those innings are really, really important. So we have got a lot of guys who just don't go as deep into games, don't go as deep into the season. And so if I can get 180 innings at like 3.75 ERA, like, I'm feeling pretty good, even though there's not going to be like a million strikeouts. That's what other guys score. So, but
and his volume can counter that, a phenomenon we talk about a lot. If a guy's throwing 190 plus innings, doesn't have the best K rate, the volume of K still kind of gets him up a little bit. To kind of, that was like Wainwright's deal as an ace, was he didn't always have the ace K rate, but he threw 225 innings. So you got your 180 Ks. So you got Perez, this year he had 169 Ks. That's not a bad total. Like that's certainly playable. I guess my question would be, can he really maintain another 7% homer to fly ball rate and keep the ball in the yard? He was very successful at doing it, but as a 31-year-old kind of learning a new trick, I got to keep looking at the 443, 145 career numbers. And I have a hard time not thinking he gets a lot closer to that next year.
I definitely think that's going to regress, but I think that's kind of built into what I think he'll end up doing. I think he's going to regress all the way back.
Built into the price, you mean, to where, which I would agree with, is that you're not going to pay such a premium for Perez that he has to repeat this year.
Yeah.
But I do wonder if it's still maybe too high for me specifically.
I think it comes back to like a homer per 9 as opposed to a homer and a half per 9, which was what he had the previous year in 2021. So I definitely, and things can change drastically, right? He ends up back in a place like Boston, and then we're just like, okay, watch him tumble down my ranks. But like I said, I think he's going to stay in Texas where, those home runs are kind of helped out by that park. It's also a pretty decent division to pitch in when you're going up against the Angels and Oakland. I know they're going to be playing less games against their division, but they still play the majority of games against their division. So, or at least they play more games against their division than they play against other teams. So
yeah.
So I think the bigger issue is Quintana, to be honest.
Let's talk about him. Let's bring him in. You got him at 86. By the way, Martín Pérez finished 41 on the player rater for starters. Quintana was 60th. And so, not too far there. He had a great year, started with Pittsburgh, and, it was a little bit under the radar because it's Pittsburgh and it's a guy we kind of not left for dead, but he was waiver wire fodder, nothing special. In fact, he was coming off a pretty bad year. So maybe he was left for dead. 6.43 ERA, 173 whip, and 63 innings last year for Quintana. Nobody was really being like, oh, I'm going to get back on that train as a rebirth. And throws up 165 and 2/3 of a 293 ERA, 121 whip. Home run suppression was also a massive key for Quintana. He went to St. Louis. You couldn't have found a better fit at the deadline, by the way, right? Like, thanks to the Pirates for really giving the perfect fit to help keep his season going. In fact, he took it up a level. He posted a 2.01 ERA with them and a 1.12 whip. Really, he kind of established the greatness of his season that Quintana did with St. Louis after a good start with Pittsburgh. So you say you have more concerns about him. 5% homer to fly ball rate and a 0.4 homer 9, which led the league. Career marks of 0.91 and 10% on the homer to fly ball. So does he get back toward that, which basically doubles those rates in your estimation for Quintana?
I think a lot of it depends on where he ends up. PNC is a great place to pitch. Busch Stadium is a great place to pitch. That division is a great division to pitch in. But does he end up back there? Because he's going to be one of those guys that is like the afterthought of the market, right? He's going to be one of the last guys signed, and he'll go to a team that just needs another starting pitcher and doesn't want to spend a ton of money. I
don't think it'll be St. Louis, to be honest.
And when I was doing the ranks last night, I was like, oh, he's in St. Louis. Great defense behind him, great park to pitch in, great division to pitch in. But I didn't even think about the fact that he's a free agent and he could end up anywhere. So yeah, he's definitely got to drop. Because I think I think you have to regress him either way in terms of the home run rate. And if you then move him out of St. Louis, you have to regress him so much more. So I probably need to drop him about 30 to 40 spots just based on that.
Okay. And we're 51 spots apart, so a drop there, we're going to be pretty close on Quintana. And I think Perez and Quintana are subject to change on both of our lists once we see where they're set. So we will definitely stay tuned there. Let's go to the rest of the guys here. We don't have to go too much further down the player rater to find Cole Irvin, who was 68th, 8 spots behind Jose Quintana. Now, I mentioned at the outset purposefully that he had some buzz this year, especially in the deeper formats, based on his home park. And he really leveraged that this year. He was a major home run guy to the point where I really don't think you should have even been using him on the road outside of maybe selective outings here and there. But the breakdown was 3.07 ERA, 1.02 whip at home, 5.26, 1.35 on the road. His soft tossing finesse stuff gets beat up when you don't have 14 miles of foul territory there, 17% K rate. He's a good control guy, great control guy, I'll say, but also has a home run issue, 1.2 homer 9 this year with just an 11% homer to fly ball rate too. So it's not like he just had an inordinate number of homers on fly balls. He just gives up homers because he's very hittable. So what are you doing with a Cole Irvin who has 2 good years in a row? Again, 4 leagues of a particular depth, but has flimsy skills and is so reliant upon that home park. You had him 88. I put him 149. I can acknowledge that I'm probably a bit too low there. 149 is pretty aggressively negative, but I do think your ranking is still a bit on the high end at 88. I'm not sure I can get inside the top 100 for Cole Irvin. Talk to us about what you're seeing from him and what you like as far as Cole Irvin, or is it just that home road split that you trust and you'll lean on the Oakland starts?
Yeah, I mean, that's pretty much it, is I'm going to lean on those Oakland starts. When we're talking about guys going outside of the top, 80 starting pitchers, they all have huge warts. And I'd rather take the guy that doesn't have the huge injury wart or the huge I'm going to be terrible everywhere wart. As much as, you hate drafting a guy you can only start half the time, or most time you can only start half the time, he's going to get innings. And, there is no risk to his rotation spot. There are a lot of guys in this area that...
Are you sure about that?
I'm pretty sure. Oakland, why would Oakland not just roll him out there, especially as they try to monitor innings on younger guys who will be kind of coming up and going back down and things like that. I think he is probably...
Are you sure he stays there, though? At some point, it's time to cash him in with Cole Irvin. I mean, they got Blackburn, Waldachuk, Caprillion, and Sears, 4 guys that they're probably hoping can be part of their future in some capacity. And Irvin's not old. In fact, both Blackburn and Irvin, Blackburn, and Caprillion are all 28 and close to 29. Blackburn's the oldest, then Irvin, then Caprillion. So he's not old or anything, but his upside is so limited. I do wonder if maybe they find...
They've got so much control on him. He's not a free agent until 2027.
I'm not
that's
sure
not a guy you just...
special, though.
I'm not sure, but that's a guy you can hold for cheap for a really long time and just kind of be that every 5th day guy, gonna get me innings, gonna soak up innings the bullpen would have to normally take. I don't know. He could, but what do they get for him on the market? Every team has an analytics department. Even if you're a team with a crappy one, they're gonna be look at what he does on the road. So
they probably trade him to a good park place. I'm not even saying that he's some big trade candidate. It would be for some nondescript prospect who's a teenager or something that they're just trying to, give some depth for. I can't take a guy in the top 100 who is half a pitcher and not even that good when he is a half pitcher. When Marquez was good, I still wasn't taking him because, he's only half a pitcher and it put such a burden on him to be good on the road. I mean, it was such an easy call to lay off of the Marquez stuff because he hadn't figured out Coors for shit. Nobody does. But Irvin is literally unusable on the road. He has 5.10 ERA last year, 5.32 this year, I think I said. So that's the tough part because you're not getting Ks either. So you're really banking on the ratios at home there. And so I can't do it with Cole Irvin.
Yeah, I'm gonna drop him probably 20 spots or so.
Okay.
So I've got him at 92 right now. I will drop him down to...
Oh, sorry. I didn't have your update there. So 92, a little bit different than what I had.
I'm going to drop him to 107.
107. Still gives us a split, but I also acknowledge that my 149 on Cole Irvin could probably use a little boost, and then it gets us a bit closer, and then we're not too far apart there. All right, let's go to the higher end guys here in this finesse lefty category. Tyler Anderson. Again, we know it's super, super, super dependent on where he winds up. Because if it's with the Dodgers, I think everyone has a level of interest that jumps up. If it's virtually anywhere else, I think all of a sudden you start to say, okay, it's not even he's going to forget what they taught him and he's like a brain dead idiot once he leaves there. What? I don't know anything that they taught me anymore. It's not that. But there is something about being with the team that kind of built you and having that reinforcement when things go wrong and the voices that you hear there that keep you good. He can probably take some of the things that he learned there to make that change up so brilliant for Tyler Anderson. But I do worry if he's not a Dodger. You had him 47. I got him 84. I think there's probably room for us to meet in the middle. I could again acknowledge that maybe I can go up a little bit there. but I can't quite go top 50 for Tyler Anderson, especially not knowing where he is. But even as a Dodger, I think I'm still probably maxing out in the 55 to 70 range. What say you on Tyler Anderson after his breakout?
He's probably the most difficult person, and really, three members of the Dodgers rotation were some of the most difficult guys to rank, and I kind of lumped them all together, and then I moved up like Nick Lodolo, and so they're not together because it goes Kershaw, Lodolo, Gonsolin, Anderson.
Yeah.
Like,
By the
what
way,
do you do with any of those guys? Like, I just don't. I don't really
tough.
know.
You got old Kirsch. You got
Mhm.
Gonzo, who like had an amazing year, but it wasn't super skill supported. And then Tyler Anderson
and injury,
and injury, absolutely.
Yeah.
And every other day, it seemed like something was going on with him.
Mhm.
And by the way, I will mention Tyler Anderson 20th on the player rater, so he had a truly brilliant season this year.
And that was the hard part. So, like, if you look at like my ranks when I do post them, like I've got what they made according to the auction calculator on there, and like, yeah, I mean, he was fantastic from a money earned, and yes, we want to not care as much about like what they did for us and think more about what they're gonna do for us. It's so hard to ignore what they did. And
It is,
but I really don't know, because like you said, if he leaves the Dodgers, that I think, I mean, depending on where he ends up, unless it's
there's a
St.
little
Louis,
handful of teams that we would still be intrigued by.
Yeah.
Goes to Houston, Cleveland, Tampa Bay. I'm not gonna name them all, but like there's 5, 6, 7 teams that we'd still be pretty interested. But that still leaves a lot where we'd be like, okay, Tyler Anderson, you're back on the scrap heap type of guy, or like a waiver wire team streamer type dude at that point. So that's my concern there. But he was 20th, man, and 18th on our auction calculator. So a little bit of discrepancy between the Razzball player rater and our auction calculator. But the bottom line is Tyler Anderson was amazing this year, and there was something behind it. It wasn't just Flukesville. It was having that amazing changeup really, really dominate for him. And how much of that do you think he's going to be able to hold, regardless of where he winds up? Let's just put him in a neutral spot, somewhere that we're not mad about, but we're not super happy about. What kind of year do we get from Tyler Anderson? He's a career 4.16, 125 ERA whip who put up a 2.57 and a 1 flat. And his skills weren't that different. In fact, his strikeout to walk ratio only went up 1 point, but his home run suppression dropped in half from 1.5 to 0.7. So what do you see there as far as like a regress to what for Tyler Anderson in a neutral spot?
And then I think that's a really difficult question, because we've seen, like, in the 60 innings he threw the Giants, like we saw very similar stuff, right? Like we saw he went to a smart organization, knew how to utilize him, and he was healthy-ish until he wasn't. And then, he was really good, and like, but it's also like this amazingly bad downside that we have to like factor in. I want to say like he's probably a mid threes guy. 3.5, 3.6.
I could live with that.
Yeah,
I'm looking more low fours for Tyler Anderson, but I could definitely get down with mid threes. Like that would make me draft him if I could be. Obviously, I can't be assured of that, but that would give me more interest. I'm not quite sure I can get there though with the home run worry. Basically, it comes down to the home run suppression for so many of these guys. That was an incidental theme here with these finesse lefties, but that 0.7 is the best he's had outside of the San Francisco time, where Tyler Anderson had a 0.8 or 0.75, if you want to push the decimal out. And it was a home run to fly ball drop too, 6%, the same 6% he had this year. So how much of what he's doing and when that changeup is working for Tyler Anderson helps the home run to fly ball rate, and how much of it is just good luck?
I mean, I think a lot of it is the changeup, and if he can continue to, utilize it in the same way and be able to pinpoint it. The problem is a guy like him is like there's so little margin for error on that, and if the changeup, if he loses the changeup the way like Rogers lost the changeup this year, like it could be those kind of results. It's a
great call.
And so, yeah, I mean, to be honest, like, how much of a difference is there between him and Martín Pérez? It may not be. I've got Martín Pérez at, what do you say, 72? Like
Yeah.
he probably should be more in that area. I initially now dropped him down and
Him being Tyler Anderson or Martín Pérez?
Sorry, Tyler Anderson. I've dropped him down to 59.
Okay.
Kind of putting him in a place of like
the king of the finesse lefties.
Yeah, it makes him the king of the finesse lefties, but like right now, like I've got him around Tyler Glass now, who like came back, looked strong, but like still gonna be the first year off of Tommy John. And I've got him next to like Jeffrey Springs, who like was great.
But who
like,
the F is Jeffrey Springs like prior to this year?
Like, doesn't even have a role. Like I mean,
you can never trust Tampa Bay.
I don't. Like I just try and trade for Jeffrey Springs in a league, and the guy who was trading for him very rightly said, like, listen, dude, he's a stud. He pitches on Tampa Bay. Like, yeah, but he pitches on Tampa Bay, and is he a stud? Like he
said that as a positive, and you were like, no, the Tampa Bay thing is a bit of a negative until I get some role certainty.
Yeah, like it's just so scary. And I got Hunter Green right there, who again, like one of these guys where like I know he's gonna have a role. He's got amazing stuff, but he also pitches in Cincinnati, and that, and
I got a little high on Green, and we're going to talk about that on Friday when we roast my rankings. You're in the fire today. I'll be in the fire on Friday, and I know you're going to have some questions.
Oh yeah,
for me.
Oh yeah, we're gonna talk about,
including two guys that you've named here. Glass now and Green, that I think you're going to have some questions on for me. But as I'm looking at it here, I do think I'm going to move up. Perez for sure, whose surge I believe in a bit more than Quintana, but I have Anderson at 84, which is where you've kind of moved Perez and Quintana to. So, and we're kind of agreeing that they're similar. So I got to get those two guys up from 136, 137. I'm definitely going to agree there. You've got Anderson down to 59. I think once he signs with the team, if it's positive, you'll probably have him closer in your 70s, my guess. And then if it's good, if it's the Dodgers, maybe you inch him back up, maybe into the upper 50s or even the low 40s again. Is that the right read on where you're going to go with Anderson based on his team?
Yeah, I think that sounds about right.
Okay. Let's get to the top guy here in this group then, Jordan Montgomery. Well, actually, Tyler Anderson had a better year. When I say top guy, I mean for bankability going forward. I think everyone trusts Montgomery the most of this group. And listen, you talk about a great fit after the trade. We talked about that with Quintana. Montgomery, too, of course. He goes to this team here, and it couldn't have gone better. He amplifies the Ks, kept his walk rate in check. The homers go down, not in a crazy rate, but from 1.2 to 0.9. Getting out of Yankee Stadium and the AL East certainly helped. And he put up a 3.11 ERA and 108 WHIP in 64 innings with the Cardinals, en route to a great season for Montgomery. He was 46th among SPs this year. You have him 32. I have him 60. I really, really like Montgomery, so I don't have any negativity here. I was pretty surprised in a positive way that you had Montgomery so high at 32. What say you?
Man, this is just a weird. I think once you get past the top 25-ish, like there's some real questions. Maybe even like top 30. And I think that like there's a really, really thick tier of SP2s, SP3s, or SP4s. And I just really love the situation Montgomery's in. And like usually we worry about guys who get traded mid-season, like how are they going to do in this kind of new location, first time going through a lot of batters that they've probably never seen before. And for Montgomery, like he even talked publicly about like, his wife had just gotten a fellowship at a hospital, becoming a doctor.
There was some sadness for that. Like he was bummed.
He was super bummed.
It was nothing anti-Cardinals. It was all about where his life was and how they were setting things up to be in the Northeast. And that shit got flipped upside down in a hurry.
Yeah. And he went to St. Louis and pretty much just shoved. He was really,
awesome.
really good. He had
what did he open with? Like 20. What did he open with? Like 20 scoreless? Or no, it was one earned in his first 25 2/3 with them. Sorry, continue on Montgomery.
Including going up against the Yankees.
In his very first start, which was great.
Yeah, I mean, he had a couple blow-up starts. He had a 5 earned run outing against the Braves and a 6 earned run outing at the Dodgers. But for the most part, like he was just really, really steady. It's a great park to pitch in. It had with a great defense behind him, and he in a great division to pitch in. Like it's just like there's pretty much nothing to dislike about Jordan Montgomery. And I'm kind of glad he got blown up a couple times towards the end of the season, because
soften those numbers a little bit.
I think most people would have had him near me had he shoved against the Dodgers and the Braves. I think
put up like a 2.50 ERA with them, and then everyone's like, "Oh my God, he's the realness." And I do think Montgomery can put up a full season of what he did with St. Louis. Like he put 311, 108. So I'm thinking I'm going to move him up a little bit, to be honest.
I might move him down a hair.
Yeah, I think 32 is a little high because, like, or let me ask you this, because then it might not be a little high. Do you think that he can A, either hold the 24% K rate, or B, that he had with St. Louis? It was 22 on the year. Or B, do you see a potential rise?
I mean, I think he could have a rise. Like that division, like I said, like a really great division to pitch in when you're going up against the Pirates and the Cubs who strike out a ton. The Brewers aren't like a dynamic offense that I'm like super, super worried about. Like that's a really, really
they had troubles. Yeah, they had pockets of issues.
Like that's a really good division to pitch in, a really good park to pitch in, an organization I really trust. Yeah, I mean, I think he could. I think he can at least hold. I think there is a chance he could even gain on that. Now he's got a full offseason to work with a team, work on the things. I mean, Cardinal Devil Magic is a real thing. I know some people don't believe in Devil Magic, but
it's October, folks. Don't try to say that you don't believe in it. It's October.
Yeah.
We see it everywhere.
I think there's a lot of reasons to be really, really stoked about Jordan Montgomery. Maybe I move him down a few spots. The hard part is like he isn't like smack in this tier of guys for me that goes from like probably 30 to about 43-ish, where like there's like just question marks, like, right? Like there are guys that are former studs that like, hey, they should get back, right? Lucas Giolito, Jack Flaherty, Pablo Lopez. And then you've got the guys who like either came out of nowhere and so they don't have much of a track record. Like, you know, Kyle Wright and Nestor Cortez and Tristan Javier, like Brady Singer, like these are guys like that I really like, but there's very little track record and there are warts, and
that is a scary group. I'm looking at your ranking set right now, and I have a lot of those guys in that general vicinity right there with you. And you're right, it is somewhat landmine laden. Some of these guys will stay strong and emerge and actually jump a level. Finding out who is the tough part. I can't remember where I read this, and maybe someone can point it out, or maybe you know, but this was a few years ago now, and it was a pretty decent study as far as like depth that pointed out that the second, third tier area of pitchers, what I think we would call like, depending on a given year, but let's say like 25 to 50 was the worst investment.
I think it was Rudy Gamble.
Okay, so it was loaded with guys who, like you said, they didn't have the track record. They'd popped up. They'd had great years, but people didn't quite believe in them. So they might, like Tyler Anderson, right? He finished 20th last year. Well, no one was going to rank him 20th, so they put him 45. And guys like that, and like you said, some of these youngsters, Christian Javier, he was brilliant. But is anybody going to rank him like 15th based on his raw skill because it's so good? No, they're going to put him in the 33 area where you put him, which I'm totally fine. I have him 27, so I'm right there with you on him. And it's just a lot of guys like that, and that is a very difficult zone to live in for your pitchers because there's a lot of uncertainty there. Even Kyle Wright, a guy I like, and we both like. We have one rank apart. I don't know. Yeah, I don't know if he's broken out for good, and this is where he is. He had high prospect pedigree and everything. So there are some nerves there. That is a dodgy little group to have some concern with. And Jordan Montgomery is part of that because I could see it. I could see him kind of regressing back toward his Yankee level, even being in St. Louis for the full year, which isn't a bad level, but it's more in like the 60s, 70s, or jumping up and having just a brilliant year where he's like lefty Waino for the year and puts up 190 innings or something. So it is a tough ranking class, and you've only been in one draft, so I can't ask you like what you're doing. I know you've been pitching heavy. Do you think that's a pool you're going to try to live in, or do you have nerves about getting too many guys from there?
I mean, so like in my draft that I'm doing right now, I pretty much lived in that spot, and I like my team. But I can
I
also
like your staff too.
Yeah, like I like what I did. But like I waited on starting pitching a little bit, and it left me having to kind of just live in this spot because I did not take a starting pitcher until the 5th round. And so my starting rotation is Joe Musgrove, Logan Gilbert, McKenzie, Brady Singer, Patrick Sandoval, Eduardo Rodriguez, Eric Svolle, and then a bunch of other guys. Like that is, I think, a really solid rotation, and I really like it. I think it has some upside. It also is like a little kind of underwhelming in some regards. I'm hoping that the depth, because I just really hammered starting pitching, kind of rests the way. Like I've already through 38 rounds, I've already got 16 pitchers. I think that kind of puts me in a position where, okay, like if one or two of these guys, fall off, I've got all these other guys to kind of backfill with. But I think I would feel much more comfortable about getting a top 5 or 10 guy and then hitting these guys.
Yeah.
As opposed to, I'm going to completely wait on starting pitching and then get these guys, or,
Because, even McKenzie kind of fits this. I love McKenzie, but we know the health issues that he had coming up. I talk about how he's my direct body comp, 6'5", 165. Can he hold up to the rigors year after year of being a full-time starter in the majors? So the talent is unquestioned. I think it's really health with him. But it's a scary group, but then you put a staff together like yours, and I'm like, I like that. I like that a lot. Like Musgrove, Gilbert, McKenzie, Singer, Sandoval to start your rotation. But if 3 of those 5 didn't go for you, I wouldn't be like, oh, how did that happen? I'd be like, yeah, well, that's, the danger of that group. So it is a really tough group. Montgomery finds himself there, but I'm excited about him as a Cardinal for an entire year. Let's move on to a group of established arms that we have some questions about. And established, I kind of put in quotes because it does include Brady Singer, who did just break out. I guess I could put him in that young arms tier, that last one. But let's start with Jon Gray. Now, I like Jon Gray. You love Jon Gray.
I do. I love Jon Gray.
40th for you. And listen, it happened, right? We mapped things out. We've been begging to get Jon Gray and German Marquez out of Colorado for years. Gray finally gets out, and outside of injury, he was great. The only thing that stopped him was the health. But 3.96 ERA, 113 WHIP, that was really solid. I said great. I don't want to overstate it. It was good. The volume hurt, but 65th is where he finished this year, despite the injuries limiting him to 127 innings. So it was a very good season for Jon Gray. What do you see for an encore here? And do you have any concerns about the health? We are now several years removed from his last 30 start season back in 2018. So that's 3 seasons without, obviously, throw away 2020. He never had the opportunity to do that. But even in that year, he got hurt. So we've started to pile up some injuries with Jon Gray. How much pause does that give you? I don't freak out over injuries, but he does have some persistent health issues. Does that give you any pause with Jon Gray?
No, I mean, not a ton. I mean, he threw 29 starts last year, like 24 starts.
I mean, he was right there, but it wasn't there.
Finished the year on the mound. Like, I'm not super worried about that. Love the home park. Again, pitching in Texas. When we do these exercises of kind of like talking about each other's rings, like there are often times where like I'm surprised by the guys you kind of identify as ones you are like, hey, what's going on here? There are other times where I go, oh yeah, no, that makes sense. And then there are ones where I come in knowing you're going to, and this is the case with Jon Gray. I just loved what he did on the mound, like I really do, and I love the part. I love the fact that he finished the year healthy. Last start was a really, really good start. Love that division that he pitches in against Oakland, against Los Angeles, even though Seattle and Houston are going to start being, Houston's already scary. Seattle's going to start getting even scarier than it already is.
Angels could be scary if they have a good offseason, but we know what they like to do. I don't know if I mentioned you have him 40. I have 81. Pardon me. I'm already moving him up. I'm already going to acknowledge that I need to move him up. I'm not quite getting to 40.
The hard part is like you look at like the guys I have behind him, and it's all these huge question marks. It's Chris Sale. It's Freddie Peralta. Like, is he healthy? Is he gonna be healthy? Like
Kershaw, is he healthy?
The 3, the Dodgers guys. Lodolo, love Lodolo, love the skills. It's still Cincinnati. and he's still
He has
super
bad
young.
command too. Can you trust Drew Rasmussen? Does Trevor Rogers and Jose Barrios bounce back? And so I get it here. I see, and you've always liked Jon Gray. Now that he's out of Colorado, his biggest problem area, you put some confidence in him and said, I'll go ahead and rank him 40 because of these questions. I have a smaller question mark on Gray than I do these other ones. So I get that. So I'm moving him up a decent bit here. I'm going from 81 to 65 right away, which matches his end of season rank this year, 65. However, we have that as an end of season rank, but that was only in what did I say, 127 innings. If he can stay healthy and pop, 28 to 31 starts, and even if he's just what he was this year, 396, 130, 113 whip, 396 ERA, 113 whip for Jon Gray, then he can be a top 50 type guy. Still think 40 is a little too high, but I did jump him up. We are now just 25 spots apart. Are you holding firm at 40?
For now, but I do think I probably end up dropping him 4 or 5 spots. I don't think I'm pushing him down below Nick Lodolo, but maybe I drop him to 44. But at the same time, like I said, those guys behind him, I love Patrick Sandoval, but that whip was not good. He has got an injury history of his own. He's
terrible
going to
command
be in 6-man rotation.
Health issues.
So I don't know that I should drop him below that. Like Freddie Peralta, I love the upside, but the injuries are really, really scary right now.
Yeah.
I think I'm gonna drop him to 42.
Okay.
And just buying Chris Sale and Freddie Peralta for right now. But I love what he has the potential to do in such a great ballpark if he can stay healthy. Like we said, I think that Rangers team is gonna get better. And so I'm a big Jon Gray fan.
Understood, and I'm not out on him. This is one where we have ranks different, but we're both aligned on the guy. This one hurt me because I've always loved Taijuan Walker. I don't hate him now.
Yes, you do.
But I have to be honest about how I feel about his skills, and I'm still worried. He had a good season. He had a great season. 3.49 ERA, 120 WHIP in 157 innings for Taijuan Walker. That was enough for you to put him 74. Which is not an egregious ranking or anything. I got him 115 though. And my concerns lie primarily with the skills. I mean, he doesn't strike guys out anymore. I think that is a big deal. And obviously he's had persistent health issues, which, it's baked into the ranking to a degree too, even though I do make clear, I don't want to overrate mostly it's that I don't want to overrate the healthy guys, quote unquote, because as cliche as it is, you're only healthy until you're not. It's the truth with pitching. The next pitch could always be the one that injures you. So he takes a little bit of a hit because he has chronic injuries that have, been present throughout his career with Taijuan Walker. But guys that are healthy don't always get a huge boost for their health because it's not guaranteed. So 74 to 115 is a pretty big split here. 41 spots. Tell me why I'm wrong about Taijuan Walker.
Okay. Since leaving Arizona, right? Okay. So we're just talking about the last 3 years. This year was his best hard hit percentage, his best ground ball percentage, his best fly ball percentage. He has now thrown 150 plus innings in back-to-back seasons. He does give up contact, but that park helps. And I think that he does such a good job of mixing his pitches that he keeps guys from hitting the ball extremely hard against him very often. I think he's gone from being this guy who could overpower you to being a really smart pitcher. My biggest concern with him is health. Taijuan Walker has had a lot of health issues over the course of his career. That being said, like I said, his back-to-back years with 157, now 159 innings, at some point you got to give him credit for actually staying on the mound in a kind of era right now in which 157 innings is great. We've got a lot of guys who are ranked above Taijuan Walker that threw 120, including the guy we just talked about, Jon Gray. So I don't think he's not the pitcher that he was, but that's okay. Like, again, he's one of these guys. I think he's going to give you reliable innings that aren't going to torture ratios. And when you're in those kind of doldrums of the year, like Taijuan Walker is, dependable, SP6 or SP8, depending on if you're a 15 or a 12 team league.
53rd most innings last year for his 157 and a third on Taijuan Walker. So that's a good point out there. I think 115 is probably too aggressively negative. I just
absolutely
certainly think sometimes I temper myself on guys I really do like, though, because I'm like, I don't want to overrate him. I've been on this guy, for years. I've been ranking him high, and hasn't really been there. But 115, definitely too low. He finished 52nd last year. That doesn't really track to have him that low. So I'm definitely going to move him up, and I'm not even sure I'm going to call on you to move him down, because I'm thinking I'm actually going to be pretty close to that mark that you have him at in the mid-70s.
I have him kind of at the bottom of a tier of boring guys, right in front of a tier of like high upside guys. Like, depending on how, like, what depth of league you're in, how you like to draft, you could flip-flop that whole tier. Like, right? Like, you could, I've got him with Jose Urquidy, Merrill Kelly, Alex Cobb, Martín Pérez, Miles Mikolas. Like, you could completely flip them with the guys going, right below him in Andrew Heaney, Ashby, Tyler McGill, Josiah Gray, Mike Clevenger, Kopech. Like, you could completely flip those tiers. And like they're, the difference between 75 and 125 is just really not that big.
It's not nearly as big as that sort of 50 points would make you think. And we've talked about that for years now, going back to terming it the globs. And there's multiple globs throughout the pitcher rankings. And I think even that glob we were talking about earlier, that 25 to 50 or wherever it starts, but like that band of guys that are on the come up or have done some things, but they're still scary, that's its own glob there too. But these later globs, they get to be 50, 60 pitchers deep. And it really does come down to personal preference to a degree. But I have shot Taijuan Walker way up the rankings here. I've actually got him 78th now. So we only have a 3-point disagreement or 4-point, and that's nothing. So
I actually with moving other guys around, I'm 76. So
okay, so there we go. We are not too far off now on Taijuan Walker after I jump him up to where I think he deserves that. I had David Peterson ahead of him, who I don't dislike, but like he's not even guaranteed a spot right now.
Yeah, I don't think David Peterson's in the rotation, unfortunately. Yeah.
So I think that's totally fair there. And I actually moved Peterson down a little bit in concert with that move, just because I looked at it and I was like, okay, well, I do like him, but let's see what happens first with the Mets offseason. All right, let's talk about this next guy who, again, this is a player I like, but I think we might be in different areas on our concerns about Jack Flaherty, somebody you had alluded to earlier. Obviously, it was a lost year, so I'm not going to hammer too hard on really anything that he did this year in 36 innings. Who really gives a crap? It was a health washout. However, it was the second such season, 78 innings a year ago, 40 innings, 9 starts in the COVID year. It was 9 starts of the full year? It was, right?
12 was, I think.
Okay, so yeah, I see it now. He missed, after his first start, he missed about a month. So yeah, he even missed some time in the COVID year. So again, standard disclaimer about I don't want to overdo it with the health concerns, especially when somebody has as much talent as Flaherty does. But we are seeing persistent issues here. I got him 68 to your 37, or 67 to your 37. 30 spots apart. Maybe we can meet in the middle here. The talent is unquestioned. But do you not have enough pause about? I guess the injury does not have you worried enough to get him out of your top 50.
No, it does. I think it has.
You're coming down on Flaherty. Okay, talk to us about Flaherty.
I love Flaherty, but what do I really love? I love the idea of Jack Flaherty. But we're not talking about 3 seasons in which he missed a substantial chunk of the season, and
which was hard to do in 2020.
Yeah,
it's hard to miss a substantial chunk because you might have missed the whole damn thing.
And I think the fact that it was 2020 and everybody had an abbreviated season, I kind of discounted that a little bit. But this is now 3 straight years where he has missed a chunk of the season. In the last 2 years, huge chunks of the season. And so, like, I don't know how. I can't rank him in the top 40. I've got to drop him. I'm going to drop him below I think I'm going to drop him to 51.
Okay. And then we're pretty much in lockstep at that point, even with a 16-point difference. Again, we just talked about how you start to get in some of these globs and it's not that far off. You know, I actually have him by one of your buddies, Andrew Heaney, who, you know, talking about health concerns, Dustin May, Jon Gray, Lance McCullers, Jesus Luzardo, Frankie Montas, a lot of injury type guys in this general vicinity here. I'm actually going to tick him up to 61. So then we're even closer on Flaherty. By the way, I'm going to roast myself real quick. I gave you a talk about instead of an actual question about 5 days after I made a tweet roasting the dog shit questions that the sideline reporters in the desk were giving there. So I got a self roast that I gave you a talk about instead of an actual question. It is a little bit easier to do that in this because I just want you to get your points out, but I should have asked you a more pointed question about the health. So I got him 61 now for Flaherty. You said you moved him down to what? Pardon me?
I think 51? I have him with 51, but I can also make the argument like he should go behind George Kirby and Frankie Montas and
I put him right by Montas. So Flaherty 61, Montas 62, Luzardo, May, McCullers, Gray, Heaney, they're all in that, and even Edward Cabrera. So these are the high upside injury risk guys.
Yeah,
as a group is what I got going here.
And the hard part is like you want to rely on track record with those guys, and Flaherty, like his track record is worse than a lot of those guys in terms of his injury profile. So
absolutely,
you know the upside is huge. He could be a top 15 pitcher this year, but like if Tyler Glasnow is a top 15 pitcher, or Lance McCullers is a top 15 pitcher, or even Jesus Luzardo is top 15 pitcher, like we're not going to be super surprised, right?
Yeah,
like they all have the skills to do it, so he can't be like that far above these other guys, considering what he's done or what he has not been able to do, which is stay on the mound. So,
yep. And if you pay too much for Flaherty, hoping that he establishes himself again, that's where you get caught up. The beauty in a player like that is to get him at a fair price with that health concern pushing it down. And that way, if he pops off, you're getting a mega windfall there with Jack Flaherty.
Yeah, I'm going to check where he went in my draft. Real quick.
I can do the same
because I'm actually really interesting. He was not a guy that I was looking to take necessarily.
And while we're looking for where Flaherty went, I'm gonna tease who we're talking about next. And I'm surprised you haven't cursed me out for being lower than you on Cal Quantrill, but you love Cal Quantrill, and I don't dislike him. This is another one where we are not too far off on our like of the player. We just have a little bit of a rankings difference. By the way, I got 220 for Flaherty in my draft, round 15.
Flaherty went a little bit higher in the mid 13th round.
Okay.
Of my, like, I think that's fine.
Yeah. The guys that went around him in my league were Jameson Taillon, also guy who's good but has injury issues, or at least in his track record, not necessarily this year. Ranger Suarez. Then Flaherty, then Aaron Ashby, Marcus Stroman, Edward Cabrera. Like I'm not too out on that. And then if he had gone in the 13th round the way he did in yours, it would have been Jon Gray, Jordan Montgomery, Trevor Rogers, Lance McCullers. So right in line with the guys I have him ranked with. So maybe I agree with that 13th round area.
Yeah, I mean he went in between Sonny Gray and Kopech. I'll take Flaherty over both of those guys.
Absolutely.
But he in the same round as Luis Garcia, Jordan Montgomery, and Chris Bassett, who I will definitely take all three of those guys over. So
you will take all three over Flaherty.
Yeah, and in the 15th round of my draft, Jon Gray and Brady Singer went. I took Brady Singer. I will take both those guys over Flaherty all day long. So
we're pulling back a little bit on Flaherty.
I think 14th, 15th round makes some sense.
I agree.
But I also think there's going to be someone in just about every draft that goes, he could be a top, 15 pitcher. Like I'm,
and they're 10th not round, wrong, but what do you pay for that?
Yeah,
when he has so many concerns, what can you really pay for Flaherty to do that? And that's where my temperament comes in of like, okay, I like him, but I'm not going to overrate him.
I want one of those guys on my team. I want a guy in the after the 15th round that I feel like can be a top
top
3 or 4 round pitcher. but I want to make sure I'm getting them after that 15th round. And I don't want a bunch of those guys. I want to
especially not
mix.
the injury ones, because
Mhm.
you can mix a couple from that area. Like one guy needs a skill boost, the other guy needs a better team, and then one injury guy. But if you do 3 injury guys there, if you go Heaney, Flaherty, Lance McCullers, I mean, you're just begging for trouble. They're all great, but I take one of them.
That's what happened to me this year and a lot of teams is I would take a stud or two, towards the top, and then I would fill in that middle part of my rotation with these guys, Andrew Heaney, Hyunjin Ryu, like guys who are either injury risk or skill risk. And then I get to June or July, and I still have my 2 studs. I still had Zach Wheeler. Like I still had the top tier guys, the Garrett Coles or the Corbin Burns. But then I'm streaming 6 of my starting pitching slots. And you just can't win that way. Because as we saw, streaming pitching was not fun this year.
No, it was really, really tough. And that I'm very eager to see, there's going to be articles about it. We've talked about it on the pod. I wonder if that's going to change anything in drafts, across the community, not just in the NFBC world. And again, it depends on your league size. It was still, pretty streamable in 10s, but even once you got to 12s and beyond, I know you didn't play them this year, but even in the 12s, I wasn't really finding options that I was really that confident in. There was a lot of weak options. And in the 15s, streaming was just really, really difficult. All right. So let's talk Quantrill. I'll let you get angry at me. Again, I do like him. How does he keep doing it, though? I think that's the question that we have to ask. And you might not have an answer, but I'm curious what you think. Watching him, I see how it works. I get it, at least to a degree. But then I look back at the numbers and I'm like 70% strikeout rate. You couldn't even strike me out. And 8-6 homer 9, or not 8-6 homer 9. 8-6 homer 9 would get you out of the league. 8-6 hits 9, pardon me. A very palatable 1.0 homer 9, which is what he had last year too for Cal Quantrill. It's right. His career is 1-1 because he had a little home run issue early in San Diego. But, after the 289, 118 last year, he goes 338, 121. So the whips keep saying that the ERAs should be higher, but they're not. It did jump up from 289 to 338, but a lot of people thought it would jump from 289 to 489, and they were wrong, even though the strikeout dropped 3 points. What is going on with your boy Cal Quantrill, and can he keep this up despite such an unimpressive strikeout rate and being relatively hittable? 7.8 last year, hits 9, 8.6 this year.
Yeah, I mean, he's very hittable. It's actually what makes him so good at what he does is that he gives up a lot of contact, but what he doesn't do is give up a lot of hard contact. He doesn't let people barrel the ball. And it's all finesse, right? It is all it's all command and control. And the days that he does struggle are days where his command is not where it should be. That being said, he's put together 2 good seasons where he goes deep into the season, pretty much maintaining his command and control. And here's the hard part. He could be this, or he could be another guy that from his same team that we were saying very similar things about not that long ago. Zach Plesac.
Zach Plesac sucks.
Things could go wrong very quickly. And so I think he's one of these guys that in a draft and hold I don't necessarily want. I prefer him in a fab league where I can drop him if things go wrong.
That makes sense. So if it goes awry with Quantrill, you want an exit plan. Yeah. So he's not really a DC target for you, despite putting up 2 solid years of some decent volume. He was a hybrid guy last year, only got 22 starts because he moved in there late, still put up 150 innings. And then this guy this year, full-time starter, 32 starts, 186 innings. But that makes sense to me why you would not necessarily want him in the draft and holds.
Yeah, but I mean, he was a guy that I identified last year as a guy I really wanted, but I did the opposite. I got him in all my DCs and I didn't get him in my in my fab leagues. But I would have loved to have a guy like this as my SP6. In my fab leagues, it would have made for a completely different season.
You need to send me a list of your 5 favorite guys. And then once we get into main event draft season, I'm just going to text you those names. And say, if you do not come out of your draft with a couple of these guys that are your absolute favorites and you let yourself watch your favorites be great on everyone else's team. I'm going to shank you.
Yeah,
Okay?
I got to take Cal Quantrill fifth in the fifth round, and like
absolutely,
that's the strategy.
Said Mullins at 1-1.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Maybe go like a closer in the second round, and then Cal Quantrill in round 3. I think you got to go round 3 to secure.
I think that makes a lot of sense.
But you need to attack. You need to get your guys. I feel bad. I mean, I didn't this year because we were in the same league. But I'm like, damn, he loves this guy. He co-signed, and I go look at your team. I'm like, oh, but he doesn't have him.
Yeah, see, I mean, it's just I'm really looking forward to like I said, like these articles have been really depressing that I've been writing. I was just talking about how bad my season was. But one, I'm owning up to it. Like, don't tell me I don't eat crow when I'm wrong, because like I'm writing a whole fucking series of articles on how bad things went.
And I want to be clear, by the way, I didn't have a great season either, especially by not getting in the cash of our main. I don't feel like I had like the worst season, but it was mediocre as hell.
Oh, mine easily was the worst season I've ever had playing fantasy. But that being said, like, I'm interested to do the main that you and I are in together, because like a lot of them, like I can go, okay, I made these mistakes during drafting. I don't think I made a ton of mistakes in that league during drafting. I think almost all of it was in season management.
I mean, you were first at one point, a couple months into the year.
Oh, I was joking around with Scott Genstad at one point, and he said like, I'm hoping like to win the league, but I think you got a really good shot, and like and then like from that conversation on, like the entire team fell apart. Like, and I mean,
the week ending July 3rd is when you were in first.
Yeah.
And then you guys took the Jason Pierre-Paul fireworks route or something and just blew yourself up, because it was a free fall from that.
Mm-hmm.
And just a month later, you were in 14.
Yeah. Like,
I don't say that to give you the flashbacks, but like that's how quickly it changed on you. And it was all your pitching just hitting the
all of a sudden. Yeah. So it'll definitely be that should come out probably Friday-ish, Thursday or Friday. So it was a bummer of a team. But that being said, I can't remember what we were talking about.
Cal Quantrill.
I would have loved to have Cal Quantrill on that.
He would have worked out. Now I will say this too. You can have your thoughts about him to the negative, folks, if you're not a big Cal Quantrill guy. The one thing that makes him a lot easier to draft is the market does not overrate him.
No.
He went 22nd in my draft. Even if he goes 3, 4, we'll say 5 rounds higher, the 17th. I might not take him there because, I'm looking at the guys that went in the 17th of my draft: Singer, Eovaldi, Eduardo, Urquidy, and Kopech. I would take all of them except Kopech above Quantrill. I'm really out on Kopech right now. I'm just really nervous about him. So I wouldn't necessarily take him there, but he could go upwards of 3, 4 rounds higher, and it would still be a fair price for him. But the market knows to kind of keep his price down because of those skills. But he is doing a lot of things right, too. I don't necessarily believe that he's like a true talent upper 4s ERA either. I think he is a guy that can live more in the upper 3s, low 4s, which would still be worse than these last 2 years. But I don't think Cal Quantrill sucks. I really don't.
Yeah, I don't either. And I mean, he went in the 20th round of my draft, right next to teammate Cody Morris, who is fine, but like, is he for sure got a role?
Yeah, love the talent, but we don't know on Cody Morris just yet.
In front of Alex Cobb, who's like another one of these guys. Like, is he good? Like, the skills say he's good, and he got unlucky. But like, is he? Like, I don't know. Like, plus
he rebounded, didn't he, as the season went on?
Yeah.
He ended under 4. I mean, he still had a 130 whip. And part of the quote unquote bad luck with Cobb was the fact that, he had some hitability there
and the world's worst defense behind.
Just unbelievable. And that's the thing too. It's
atrociously bad defense.
If you're allowing extra contact and you have the worst defense, that's a match made in hell. So despite the fact that he had a really strong strikeout to walk rate and didn't allow homers, he still had an ERA that was like a run higher than his FIP. This is Alex Cobb we're talking about. So yeah, I get it. But I will say, if you like Cal Quantrill, he's an easy buy because the market does not overrate him. Let's talk Tyler Mahle. You had 55 versus 74. This is definitely in that area where our 19-point split really isn't much of a split. I don't think we're going to have sharp disagreement here on how we view him. I think we're going to end up being pretty close. And I think even with some shuffling that I've done here, he's already moved up a bit. So we're pretty close here. So let's not worry about our differences on Mahle, because I don't think that there are many. Let's talk about what our expectations are, because we mentioned this with Jon Gray. We weren't quite banging this drum as long on Tyler Mahle, but I know for me, I saw him as a half starter this year, so I wasn't really drafting him. I wanted him the hell out of Cincy ASAP. So he got traded, and I was pretty giddy. And then 4 starts later, he pops in Minnesota. He's still going to be a Twin next year. Do you see Tyler Mahle as somebody who can really break out? And I mean, even beat the 2021s, because that's where he kind of broke out. He started to show flashes in 2020, brought it together in 2021 with a 3.75 ERA and a 1.23 WHIP in 180 innings. Can he build upon the 2021 for Tyler Mahle being out of Cincinnati completely?
I think he can. And this rank saying I think he will. He finished the year on the IL, which is a bit concerning.
Mm-hmm.
But his last 3 outings, he only gave up 1 home run, which is kind of his biggest issue. Now, his first outing in Minnesota, he gave up 3 home runs, but that was against Toronto.
Which was like, come on, because he got out of there and it was like, finally he's free, and then he's like, here's 3 homers. But even that though, he only allowed 4 runs in 6 innings. It was palatable.
Yep.
And then he was great against the Angels, and then 2 busted outings surrounding his.
He was hurt.
Health.
I think that's what it was. So. If he comes into the year healthy, I probably should move him down just because we don't know that he's healthy right now. But if he comes in the year healthy, I'll move him back up. So I've got him 55 right now. I'm going to move him down. I've got an injury tier somewhere. Hey, here we go. I'm going to move him down to 69.
I got him 68. I put him in that injury tier that I had mentioned earlier with the Flaherty, Montas, Luzardo, May, McCullers, Gray, now Mahle, and Heaney with Edward Cabrera. So I'm right there with you. All right.
Yeah.
We are in lockstep then. All right. So looking at the clock here, it's getting beyond the hour mark. So let's speed run this one a little bit here. These are some interesting young arms that we have bigger splits on. I'm gonna punt Brady Singer. We have a 16-point split, but it's not that far.
I love
him too. You did go 31. Are you putting your money where? I will ask you one question. Are you putting your money where your mouth is, and would you draft him that high?
I don't think I need to. Now I may need to at some point, because here's the thing: when I say I don't think I need to right now, and I proved it in this most recent draft.
Yep.
Where or this draft that I'm currently in right now, where I got Brady Singer in the 15th round,
and he went the 17th in mine. So that's
there's no way. There's no way he goes in the 15th round for very long.
Would you pay 11th round? In my draft, Gonsolin, May, Pablo Lopez, and Frankie Montas went there.
Yeah. In my 11th round, Jeffrey Springs, Andres Munoz, Lance McCullers, Lucas Giolito, and Charlie Martin. I will take him over all of those guys.
Yeah. I really like Singer. So that's why I don't have pushback for you. We are just a little bit different, but you're fully confident. I'm quite confident. I've actually moved him up here during our discussion. He's at 42 now for me. So we're even closer, and I just don't think we're too far off. This next guy I do like, but I am being a little bit cautious on Aaron Ashby. We have a 19-point split. I got 95. You've got him 76. Where do you come out on the control? And is there a real path to improvement here? Or is he just going to be one of those guys that has poor command and control that has to outrun it with the stuff?
I think command is better than he showed last year. I mean, he had almost 20% homer to fly ball rate. Like, I don't think that's going to
pretty rough. Yeah. As a ground ball guy too. So it's like any lot of fly ball. It was going out of the yard in a 1 in 5 clip, obviously. And he's a 57% ground ball rate for Aaron Ashby. So that allowed the homers to be way up. Also had a 324 BAT, but things didn't really work in his favor. But he does have a 10% walk rate in his 139 major league innings. And that's in line with, it's a bit better than what he did in the minors, but he was also a bad control guy there. He'll be 25 next year.
Mm-hmm.
He threw 107 innings this year. I think he can build on that. There is upside. I'm still worried that maybe it's even still a year early on Ashby. Is he somebody that you're targeting?
He is a guy that I'm targeting. But he's also a guy I want to pair with these, Martín Pérez's, Cal Quantrill's kind of guys where, like, hey, I know I'm going to get just palatable innings from these inning eaters types. Now I can pair him with a guy like Ashby that I don't know what I'm going to get. Like, I mean, if I got 140 innings from Ashby, I'm going to be pretty stoked, I think. And there's a chance, obviously, to get some more. But I really don't know what I'm going to get from Ashby. He's one of those guys that he could vacillate 20 spots either direction on my ranks, maybe even 30 spots or 40 spots on the lower end, just depending on what mood I am in during
That's the beauty of ranks.
Session.
It's so true, by the way. Like, why'd you move him 15 spots? I don't know. I looked at some different things that day. Like, it is that fluid. I know that's not a satisfying answer for some people, but that is how it works with rankings, though.
Yeah, and so, like, I think Ashby is one of those guys who's really difficult to rank and kind of pinpoint where he should go. True talent level, I think, says that he could be a top 50 starter pretty easily this year, and probably even higher than that. But injuries have been a really big issue for him. Control has been a really big issue for him. And like I said, like, the command was not as good this year. I think it was better. I think it's better than it showed on kind of the numbers. But at the end of the day, like, what happens on the field is actually what is important. So
the reality,
yeah, I'm going to keep him there.
Okay.
But for now, like I said, he could easily, if I moved him down 20 spots tomorrow, like, it shouldn't be shocking to people.
Yeah, that's Aaron Ashby there for the Brewers. I'm not going to budge on this one. We have a 44-point split on Josiah Gray. I'm 122. You have 78. It's a 2-3 homer 9 and 219 innings. There's just not a world where that's going to be readily fixed. It might lower from 2-3 because that's truly atrocious. But where's your top 80 confidence coming from with somebody who's had such issues? And it's not just the home run issue. He also doesn't have much control. He's a 10% walk rate guy as well. He's been pretty hittable at an 8.2 hits 9. Outside of the quality raw stuff that can get swings and misses, what is there to like about Josiah Gray that gets you into the top 80? I had a come to Jesus moment with him during my rankings. I was like, because I had him not quite where you did, but in my top 100, I said, you know what? No, like, I can't wish cast this home run rate to fix itself.
Robbie Ray. And
okay, but he was never that bad. He was that bad. Like, I'm sure he was. Like, like, I'm pretty sure he was. But, like, I mean, I think that's what he wasn't that bad. He has one bad season that high. It was the pandemic year, 2.3. But coming into that season, he was a 1.3. He did have homer issues with walks. I get where you're going with that, but Robbie Ray was way more refined than Josiah Gray. He's still a long way from even being mediocre / poor Robbie Ray right now. And that's my concern with Gray. And that park does him no favors as far as for home run issues. Like,
the division does him no favors either, because, like, you've got 3 really good offenses in that division, and the Marlins at some point should start getting better offensively. Yeah, he should probably drop for me. That being said, like, there is part of me that still wants to believe. And
I get that feeling, but I couldn't let that seep into my rankings.
Yeah, maybe I'll let it seep in. The hard part is, like, I have in this area, like, with the Aaron Ashby's, where it's like, these guys can move around quite a bit. Where did you say I had him? Let's see.
You have him, 78. Well, that's where I had it this morning. You've done a lot of shuffling, so he might be a little bit lower, but Josiah Gray is still going to be top 90.
He's at 80-something for me right now. I think I can move him. Oh, I'm going to hold right there for right now. Just but he will move at some point. It's really hard to, like, you've got Mike Clevenger. Like, what is Mike Clevenger? You've got
also terrifying
Michael Kopech injuries. What is Michael Kopech? Roansy Contreras, who I love the skills, but the Pirates hate him for some reason. And
I think they're just being kind of overly. He's 22, right? I don't think we can go hate on that just yet. I understand I know exactly what you're talking about. That
Yeah.
point where he was just lingering in the minors. He wasn't pitching there. He wasn't pitching in the majors. What was going on? It seems like it was just kind of a break. But he's 22, going to be 23 next year. So I don't think they hate him. I just think that they're being very cautious with a really bright young arm. But with Josiah Gray, it's like I get the swing and miss stuff, but that's all he's leaning on right now, and there just hasn't been enough to counterbalance the problems for me.
And the hard part too is even with the swing miss stuff, like he had a 24%, strikeout rate.
Mm-hmm.
Like you want a guy who's like 27 if you're going to be taking on that risk.
Yep, exactly.
And so I think that's one of the reasons he has to drop. I just have to figure out where to drop him too. I still will get shares of Josiah Gray, but I want to get them cheaply as possible. And
you will. Like I think the market is going to be pretty smart about him. He won the 16th round of my draft with other question marks such as Ashby, Edward Cabrera, Alex Cobb, and Mike Clevenger. And then Kopech went right after that. But then Singer, Eovaldi, Erod, and Urquidy went. This is a group I mentioned earlier. I would take all of those guys ahead of Josiah Gray.
Yeah, he went in the 20th round of mine in the Cal Quantrill, Ronesy, Alex Cobb kind of area. I don't necessarily have a problem with that, but I think I prefer to get him a few rounds later.
Yeah, and so if Josiah Gray is going in more like the 16th round where he went in my draft, then I'm wrong, and the market, I think, is overrating him at that point. I need something that starts with a 2 for Josiah Gray's round for me to have any interest right now.
I'm like he went in the 20th round. He did not go to me. Like in that, I think that tells you. Like I much prefer who I got in the 21st round in Eduardo Rodriguez.
Me too. I would agree with you there. All right, this one's not a point of contention because I'm not out on this guy. I parked Bobby Miller, prospect for the Dodgers, pretty low, just as kind of like a, hey, I want him on the list. But you put him in the top 100. Are you confident that he gets a role?
I mean, I'm not confident in this moment, but the Dodgers have a lot of question marks in this rotation.
I would agree. Do you think he's the answer, or a team like this, don't they have to get a more stable answer?
I don't know that they will. Okay. They haven't been the team that has gone and gotten the more stable answer here.
Not pitching wise, yeah. It's been hitters that they brought in with Betts, Freeman, Turner.
And the times they've gone and gotten those big free agents, they haven't necessarily panned out the way they would have liked. In Trevor Bauer and David Price and like those guys. I know Price was a trade, but
fairness on the Bauer thing, that was off the field though.
Yeah. I mean,
his talent was still there. So let's map it out a little bit.
But I think it makes sense from a real life baseball perspective. Like, do you want to invest that much money into a guy that can be gone in an instant? Now, with Bauer, it was obviously off the field stuff, but it could have easily been a flexor tendon goes. And, when they're so good at developing pitching and fixing broken guys, do they just say, we can make do with Bobby Miller and the next Tyler Anderson, and the next
and
Tony
are there
Gonsolin?
even any great players for them to go after? I mean, maybe they try to get Rodon or something, but he's got such an injury track record that I hear you. Maybe they're like, okay, we're going to go with young guys and then bring in Michael Wacha, speaking of the changeup, and maximize his changeup and re-sign Heaney or something. There is the avenue for Bobby Miller to be up relatively early and maybe in a perfect world even break camp. That's something that's a lot more plausible in today's game based on what we've seen now with the new rules and the way the teams adjusted to them this year with bringing up guys and saying like, okay, we can get some reward there with the rookie of the year stuff, getting draft picks. Pitched in AAA. It was a AA AAA season, primarily in AA for Bobby Miller, 91 innings there, 21 in AAA. As a top 100 guy, I know you don't need him to break camp. And we're in draft and hold season as well. So you could say this is a draft and hold ranking, and I would understand if you're like, okay, and then if we get to March and he's not up, then I'm going to move him way down.
Yeah.
But are you going to be drafting him in your draft and holds? We have talked often about how we don't take too many prospects because you can get caught with nobody to play. Is he somebody that you are going to get some shares of, Bobby Miller, for the Dodgers?
I mean, I would like to. I did not get him in this draft. I was pretty close to taking him, and he went right before my last my last 2 picks in the 35th. He went in the beginning of the 35th round. I would have liked to get him. That being said, like I took Cole Winn.
What round did he go in?
35th.
He went in the 21st of my draft.
Yeah.
So I'm glad that's not his price, though.
Mhm.
I like to see the balance.
I think he's going to be one of those guys that bounces around. Like, I mean, one of the things I saw in my draft, which I think I saw in your draft too, was prospects went all over the place and quick and fast. Like people
that can happen
really,
in DCs because if there's 2-3 people that love them, they're just taking them every which way.
So, but that being said, like I prefer Cole Winn.
Why not as well, by the way.
Yeah. So, and I took him in the 28th round. So,
I think Cole Winn could break camp.
I think he could too.
I'm pretty surprised he didn't make an appearance this year. Like, I know they're not a good team, but like they were giving guys chances, and there were some flaws in his game, but he pitched AAA all year, 122 innings, 15% walk rate for Cole Winn, pretty dicey there, and a 9.3 hits 9. But he was also in the PCL. I thought he'd get a shot, even though the surface stats and even some of his skills weren't great. But I'm intrigued by Cole Winn. I definitely like him. But let's finish up with our last guy, and this one hurt me because I looked at your ranking. I was like, that's where I had him. But I've got some concerns about Matt Manning's health right now. It's nebulous, though, right? And that was because we talked about this one offline, and you were like, I didn't really see anything. So I put him 86, I being you again in this case. I have 106. So we have a 20-point split, which, again, in this tier is not crazy. But I'm nervous about the forearm. He missed a bunch of time to end the year with the forearm strain. The team is saying it's precautionary because we were terrible. Why bring him back? All of that. But I'm a little bit nervous right here with Manning, especially with everything that's been going on with the Tigers. All 3 guys blew up in the wrong way. Mize, TJ, Skubal busted, and Manning busted this year. Like, this year could not have gone worse for the Tigers. But you have some confidence in Matt Manning with an 86 ranking. Is he somebody you're drafting, and what is your outlook with regards to this nebulous forearm strain that he's been dealing with?
Yeah, I mean, I drafted him in this league. So, yeah, I am drafting him. It was one of those guys where like I just kept waiting to pull the trigger, and like I couldn't do it. And I got to a point where I was like, yeah, I'm gonna take the gamble here. I don't have very many stashes. 34th, something like that.
45th round in my draft.
Yeah, and I mean part of the reason I didn't 34th round, beginning of 34th round. One of the reasons I kept putting it off is like, man, he went super, super late in Paul's draft. Maybe I can keep waiting. But like, man, the pitching is deep in some regards this year, but it's also like it dries up. And one of my issues last year was like I would wait, and then all of a sudden it dried up, and I was like, oh, now there's nothing. And Manning, if he's healthy, will be in the rotation. Now, I think in a 50-round drafting hold, you have the ability to have like 5 real stash spots. So, you know, whether that's injury or prospects, like I think you have 5 stash spots. He's one of them. Cole Winn is another. But you just want to be very, very careful not to stash all of either one position, like starting pitcher, or you know, like I had a drafting hold that I actually finished 6th. And it had 2 main weaknesses, and I was in like 2nd place going into like the last couple weeks of the season. But my 2 main weaknesses were my closers. I lost my closers really early on. Like I ended up finishing the year with like 21 saves, which was like 14th place. But that was, you know, just not identifying guys, and Will Smith losing a job after the draft because Kenley got signed. The other thing was
that sucks.
That hurt me in a few leagues. The other thing was stashes. Like I stashed so many guys that when I did get hit with a rash of injuries, I didn't have enough guys to, you know, actually, field an fully active lineup at times. And so I'm being very careful in these drafting holds to not get overly excited by prospects, not get overly excited by injury stashes. Take 5, and that's it.
Yeah, I think that's a good way to put it. And one thing that I would definitely recommend with regards to these drafts, these drafting holds, is map out what you really want to do. Like really take a look and say, okay, I want to get this many pitchers, this many of this position. 3 catchers if I take an elite one, 4 if I kind of play in the middle or the back end with it. You really want to map that out, or else you're going to get caught in the draft not really knowing where you should go. And I've done that before, where I've kind of winged it throughout the entire thing, and then I'm like, this team blows. Like I didn't have a cohesive plan. It's 50 rounds. You really need to know your plan, especially for rounds, I would say 20 through 50 in particular. Yeah. It's kind of easy to go through those first 15 to 20 rounds, but then you get into the rest of that team building. That's your team for the whole year. So I like your idea of 5 stashes, split them up between prospects and injuries, split them up between positions. That's a really good tip there, because it is draft champion season, and I finished my draft. You're in one, and things are going on right now with drafts. If you're taking the time off and you're not drafting yet, I don't blame you. We're insane. We're absolutely insane people.
Well, there's also one of the reasons they do these early drafts is it helps me really kind of learn the player pool. Like,
completely agree.
I mentioned on a previous episode that I really felt the infield was a lot weaker than the outfield. I now know that was incorrect. The outfield is awful this year. So like, I made that mistake in the draft. Like, hey, like, oh, I took Juan Soto in the first round, and then like I waited a while, and now I'm like, holy crap, what do I do in the outfield?
What do I do? Yeah,
Michael A. Taylor, welcome to my team. Like,
I learned that the hard way too. I stacked that amazing infield, which I love, but then outfield got a little dicey, and I was like, we'll figure it out. But anyway, great talking. You handled the fire well. I'll be on the hot seat on Friday as we dice up my rankings, and you give me some pushback on some guys. We'll have that coming Friday. But until then, Justin, great talking with you, and have a good one.
Take it easy.